is the Education and Juvenile Collections Librarian at Brigham Young University. Suzanne Julian is Library Instruction Coordinator, also at BYU. And Jennifer Wimmer is Assistant Professor of Teacher Education at BYU. And I'll go ahead and turn it over to them now. Thank you, Jennifer, Rachel, and Suzanne.
Thank you. This is Suzanne. And we are going to get started. We wanted to, okay, we just want to make sure everybody can hear. So if I'm too soft or you can't hear or there's feedback, let us know. We'll adjust as we need to. But we just wanted to give you a view of where we're located. Today the mountains have a little bit of snow on them, so that's not quite an accurate reflection, but we are here in Provo, Utah at Brigham Young University.
Oh, yeah. Allison, can you change it over so we can control the slides? Yeah. Yeah. Okay, is that better sound-wise? Okay, looks like she changed it. Okay, now we have control of the slides. We'll move forward.
Okay, and we are located currently in the David O. McKay building. That's our School of Education. And so we will be talking to you from that building there. I'm Suzanne Julian. I'm the Library Instruction Coordinator. I've been here at BYU for about 8 years.
I'm Jennifer Wimmer. I am in the Department of Teacher Education. I teach elementary ed students, and I have been at BYU for 5 years. And I'm Rachel Wadham, and I'm the Education and Juvenile Collections Librarian. I work in the Harold B. Lee Library, and my subject assignment is with the School of Education, and I have been at BYU for 18 years.
So in July, Rachel presented at the ALA conference for an EBSS poster session, and she talked a little bit about our research with the iSkills test in teacher education. And so this is the poster that we used at that session. We're going to take a little bit more time this time and go in depth with some of the research that we have. And so I'll start by talking about the iSkills test and how we used it with the students in the education program. Then Jenny will go ahead and talk about the connection between education and information literacy and the results that we found. And then Rachel will continue with the results as it applies to the library and some changes that she's made in the program of the way she teaches. So ETS is the company that produces the iSkills test, and they're the ones that do the GRE and the ACT. The reason that we like this test is because it is scenario-based, and students can do activities related to information literacy skills, and so they're able to show what they know rather than just regurgitate some answers. We've given you the website link there, and you can go to their website, and they have little demonstrations of what the test looks like and what it includes, as well as a way to connect with ETS to get a sample of the test so you can try it yourself. It covers the information literacy skills using a variety of tasks, and so these are, of course, the ACRL information literacy tasks. The two that we'll talk about a little bit later that had some impact in our findings were create and communicate. And in that test, the students were asked to do 2 tasks that involved information literacy skills of creating and communicating. The first one was to create a PowerPoint presentation using information and visuals that were provided to the student in the test, and then they arranged them on the slide based on what they felt was the most effective way of presenting that information. They also had another task where they were asked to create a flyer, an advertising flyer for a particular event, and had to communicate that information to a particular audience that they were doing. So those were the 2 major activities that they did to assess, create, and communicate as ACRL standards. Our study included 341 education students, which was about 85% of the students that are enrolled in the program. You can see that they do have a high GPA, so we felt like they were quite bright and would do well on the test. They do go through a gateway course called Foundations of Literacy, and they're generally juniors. I wanted to mention here the test incentives that we used because you don't have to have expensive incentives in order to do this effectively with the students. We had two options when we first started with the test incentives. We did a $10 gift card to our local bookstore and then extra credit. And we did find that the extra credit was more incentivizing to the students than the gift card, so we were able to drop the gift card in later versions of the test. This slide shows how we broke it down. So we started in 2012, and the first three groups, cohort groups that we sent through the test were done as extra credit, and the students had options and choices as to what they would do. And so for us, it was a little more work because we had to offer more sessions to accommodate their schedules, but we were able to do that effectively and get them in. The last semester, fall 2014, this one that we're currently in, it was a nice change in that Jenny made it a class assignment and then gave up class time to go ahead and let the students come and be tested at that during those sessions. And so we were able to get all of the students done in about 2 hours. Administering the test is fairly easy, and luckily you have local control, so you can set it up and work with it as you need to. So for us, we have 2 library classrooms that have about 30 computers set up, and we just would schedule those and then go ahead and teach in them. The test is supposed to take 75 minutes, but about 15 minutes of that is a demographic section that the students can get through fairly quick. And then it's a time test, but the students can move quicker, so if they finish in less than the time, they can move on to the next section. So the majority of our students finish in about 60 minutes. Because of the size of our room and the constraints we had, we only tested about 50 students per session. And we were able to do that with 2 proctors. The first proctor would make sure we had the signed consent. The other one would keep the test moving at the computer station with sending the proctoring or sending the test forward. Some of the strengths that we found in the test were that it aligned well with the ACRL standards, and so it was designed for us to be able to test information literacy skills. We liked the scenarios in that we felt it was more practical. It was taking something the students would recognize and use some critical thinking in order to accomplish the task, but not just regurgitating information. We liked the fact that it was skills-based. And the students made choices. They weren't forced into a right answer. So if they took a particular pathway to get to the answer, ETS took that into account, and their score was based on the pathway they took, looking at the information literacy skills of an expert, and then comparing it to those students how they got to that answer as well. So, a little technology glitch there. So some of the things that we observed about our students as they took the test is that a lot of them looked at it as a software test rather than a test of critical thinking or problem-solving skills. And so they would focus, when we talked to them about the test, they would focus on the fact that it seemed a little outdated, that they knew how to do spreadsheets or word processing or email, and so why were we testing on this? So we did find that they felt like it was more of a representation of software rather than critical thinking skills. They also felt like because it was a time test and they were getting graded on how they approached the test, that it didn't really reflect their skill. They thought they were more skilled than the test scores may have reflected. And one of our concerns when we went into this is because it was extra credit and students want to get through a task quickly to get that extra credit, we were afraid they might not take the test as seriously as we needed them to. But we found that the majority did really take time and concentrated and worked their hardest to get their scores that they did. Just in showing you what a report looks like, you do have some test reports that you can generate through iSkills. They are very much of an overview. You don't have a lot of control over what is presented. And one thing I wanted to point out is the reference group. The examinees that are represented there, the 642 from all years, that number did not change no matter how many participants we had within our test group. And so we didn't see much change in that, and we're not sure quite where they're pulling it from. If you notice on the classes section, bullet number 2, It's saying that it includes 10th, 11th, 12th, college freshman, college sophomore, college junior, college senior, grad student, and other. And so we don't know what comparisons we had. What was the percentage of 10th graders that were being compared to our juniors, or how many grad students were included? We just didn't have that reference to help us know how our comparisons were. And so we see that as a little bit troublesome for making a good analysis of information literacy skills with our students. Some of the limitations that we found in the test is we started this 2 years ago, and I have been looking at this test for at least 8 years because we've had interest in doing it. And in that time, I haven't seen any variation in the questions. The same tasks and the same questions are presented every time I've looked at the test. And so that, to me, says maybe they're not updating this as much as we might want or hope. So it'll be a long-term type of test that we can use frequently. And again, as we mentioned, the comparisons weren't updated as much as we could see. Now, the group that they compared us to might have, but we didn't see any changes. And our students and even myself disagreed a little bit when ETS would say that somebody had selected the best answer. There was some disagreement as to how efficient they were at getting to that answer. And so a lot of students felt like, if I got to the right answer, shouldn't I get credit rather than being told that a certain path is the correct path to get there and get the efficient score? So for us, we're not quite sure how ETS scores everything to get best as well as most efficient path to that answer. So what we'd like to see in the future with testing for information literacy skills is an understanding of how these tests might fit in with the new threshold concepts. Now that ACRL is moving beyond just the basic information literacy standards that we've had for these years, where do threshold concepts fit in? How can we test for them? Will iSkills be effective? So that's something that we're going to take a look at. And we'd like to find a test that would help us think beyond just a software test, that students would recognize that they're being asked to problem solve rather than focusing on a software package itself. So now I'm going to turn the time to Jenny to go ahead and talk about education's connection to the program.
All right. Again, I'm an elementary professor, and I was introduced to this project, and I have been spending quite a bit of time thinking about what's happening because of technology and what does that mean in helping young children and elementary age kids learn how to read. And so up here I have a definition of new literacy. So that's the terminology kind of a hot topic in literacy education. And really thinking about what changes because students are not reading traditional print-based literacy. And so Don Liu has come out and said that here's these different set of skills that are necessary for students, that we're not just focused perhaps on the phonics side of it, but that they're coming at it, they need different skills and different tasks that they're using as they are reading and interacting with technology. So as I sat down with my library colleagues, what I found out was that we are talking about the same things, we're just using different vocabulary. And so as we talked, I first thought, we're not on the same page, but as we talked and listened, that we came to an understanding of, we were speaking about similar concepts, but perhaps just using a different vocabulary. So really thinking about, with the definitions that's up there for informational literacy that ALA has come out with, we see a lot of similarities with definitions of new literacies and what students are being able to do. The biggest change I think that's happening in literacy is the idea of we're looking at students participating by producing something as opposed to just consuming knowledge. And so I think that's where, as we get to talking about the skills of create and communicate, where we're seeing some things happening that we're perhaps troubled by. As we sat down and wrote down the purpose of our study, I'm just going to share some of the results of that study, was really to be able to identify and evaluate pre-service teachers' informational skills. I do believe we have an assumption that students are learning these somewhere along the way. And so everyone feels like, oh, they should just already know them and perhaps not feel as responsible for them. But we are definitely finding that it's something that we really need to attend to particularly.
So again, just as a repeat a little bit of who the participants are, very highly intellectual, high scholarly aptitude for the students, just noticing the high GPA and the ACT scores. And so that was something that we really kept in mind, especially as the comparison group did go down to sophomores in high school, that we expected our students would be very high in this. So we received data reports from ECS, and then we found that not to be as helpful as we had hoped it would be, and so we own level of analysis and did some descriptive and inferential statistics, which I will share with you. Here's the ECS data. This is what it comes down to. So here was their slide, or one of the tasks that they needed to do. So make a slide arguing a position on telecommunicating based on the information presented. And so then this information just shares with you who received the highest answer, what part of the reference group received the highest answer. And so basically just looking at these overall ideas, we could feel quite confident that our students are scoring at least above the reference group. But that did not get us quite down to the fine grain of information that we were hoping to achieve with the results of this test. So what we did is we created our own coding that went along with what is the best answer, or you chose close to a good answer. It was it's very unclear. One of the things I think we would have to say with ECS is we tried numerous times to contact them and have them help us understand how they were scoring or how they came up with their decisions, and we did not receive a lot of useful feedback from them, or any actual feedback from them. So this is inferential statistics that we came up with as we were trying to make sense of what they were doing. And I am by no means a statistician. I'm seeing that you're getting static. I'm going to try. I don't think I can mute the speaker, though. We'll just try maybe adjusting our mic just more into the center. All right, I turned our speaker down. Is that helping with the sound quality? No, some. Oh, our apologies for that. All right, we'll keep going and see if there's something that can happen. So this just kind of gives presents an overall picture of what we found. The numbers, just to let you know that 1 was the best. So on the estimated means, the closer it was to 1, the better response they had. So as we looked at this, it was statistically significant that create and communicate were at a lower level than the rest of the skills. And so this, again, is, I believe, a lot of detail. And so we'll go on to the next slide, which I think offers up maybe a more easily understandable, at least from my point of view, on what we found. So the students were doing quite well and scoring at very high levels in define, access, evaluate, manage, and integrate. But again, we found as soon as we asked them to shift from a consumption to a production, that the scores did fall. So on this slide, what we wanted to just point out, again, is looking at, we've highlighted a few of the key words in all of the 5 skills. But on create and communicate, again, when it's asking them to adapt, apply, design, or construct, or to disseminate the information to a particular audience, that the students weren't able to interact, or that their scores did go down, which was troubling to us. Again, we start to think about, with these students going out to be teachers, hoping that they are going to create opportunities for their students to learn these skills. And I think one of our concerns was that, at least as a teacher educator, I have taken for granted that my students are able to work at this level of thinking and understanding, and that hasn't happened, or I haven't done things to help create opportunities for them to create and to communicate and to participate in producing information. I just have one quick thing to say before I turn the time over to Rachel is this quote really just comes from the idea of a hope in the teacher ed literature of thinking that these students, if they've grown up in this age of technology, that they will make the automatic transition of using it in the classroom. And so with Lancashire and Noble saying, what we really need to do is look and see what people who are using technology are doing, who are the insiders in the classroom. And so the idea has been that the teachers are outsiders, but what we're finding is these students have grown up in an era of technology. They're using it all the time. In fact, they oftentimes think it doesn't need to be learned. It's something that they have just picked up or assimilated on their own. And yet what this study is showing us is that they are not as prepared as we would like them to be to go out and not only use these skills, but then hopefully teach them to the students. And I'll turn the time to Rachel.
Okay, thank you. Again, this is Rachel Wadham, and I'm the education librarian. So our focus here is now on what the library can do after this. And our apologies for the sound problems. We've adjusted here as much as we can, so we hope that that's working out on other ends. But when we started with this project, we really wanted it to be practical. We didn't want it to be something that we would just find some really interesting data and then move on with. And we did find some really interesting data, especially at that create and communicate level. So what we have found and what we have decided is that these students really don't know these higher order level kinds of things. And that's concerning to all of us, all three of us, from each of our perspectives, that there's some expectation that they should know all of this, but even our students who are really academically above what could be expected of most universities, they are not, they're not the levels we need them to be. So when we found this, we just trying to decide what do we do now. So the first step that we have decided is that we are going to start communicating what we found with a broader audience. Presentations like we did at ALA and this one is really trying to broadly share this data with a larger community. One of the other things we're trying to do is actually start sharing with the teacher education community as well. I think that's one of the things we do really well as librarians is we share together within our discipline what we find, but we don't always share it outside of our discipline. So we have been presenting this data to conferences of teacher educators, and we'll be presenting it this next year to other conferences just focused on teacher education. So we're really excited to get the word out and start the conversation more broadly. We also are working to share this results with the dean and the faculty of our School of Education to make sure that they're encouraged in this broader discussion of things and engaging our faculty in the library and our faculty in the School of Education with ways to really implement all of these ideas. As we began these discussions and started looking at them, we started looking at ways we could change our library instruction, because all of this discussion and all of this other people we're going to bring in on the table to discuss won't make immediate change. But we had immediate change capabilities in our library instruction. So we went about trying to figure out how to address the deficits found in the create and communicate. And in that process of trying to figure out how we could address those deficits, I encountered this book, Making Thinking Visible, and the full citation information is on the next slide, so we can move to that one. The full citation information is here. This was an amazing book because what it does is it outlines ways that you can take higher order thinking skills, creative thinking, skills and actually teach them and strategies by which you can make them visible. And so in looking at the strategies that this book promoted, there were several strategies that we learned that we could implement into our library instruction that made it possible to actually bring out some of these higher order things and to connect the students more, and particularly with the create and communicate structures. So in finding that, I developed a new approach to library instruction. And what I do now in the classroom when I do library instruction for my education students is very different. The first thing is that we're changing our language. When we talk about these things, we talk about them less about research and more about the skills that are associated with research. In libraries, we've tended to use research as a more catch-all phrase for everything that goes into all of this. And I think one of the problems with that is we don't then delineate that there are steps and processes and other kinds of things that go into research. We also limit ourselves because when people hear research, they think of research paper. But when we're talking about communicate specifically and communicate with a population of elementary school teachers, communication is much broader than a paper. It's a presentation, it's a lesson plan, it's even a lesson, it's an instruction session, it's all of those different kinds of things. So we started talking about making claims, debating, presenting, communicating, analyzing, citing, questioning, identifying and utilizing as the terms that we used in the library instruction instead of research. And I've tried to replace that word research with things like conversation, inquiry, strategy to help these students get a broader concept of what it is. In addition to that, I've also wanted to move my presentations away from pointing and clicking. A lot of what I was trying to do was teach them how to access sources. And that was not what they needed. They needed these higher order thinking. So I wanted to move from pointing and clicking, accessing sources, to thinking and engaging with those sources. As the iSkills test as well, I wanted to focus on the skills, the information literacy skills, not the tools. They can learn how to use the tools. There's other sources that they can use the tools. It's my job to help them learn the skills. So in that skill, I focused on synthesis. And I developed this process by which we look at synthesis. We developed this question. It's a very narrow, specific question, and that helps students see what kind of context, the kind of research that we're doing. We actually present this question in the context of not a paper, but that's an oral presentation that would be given to a cohort of teachers as if they were being student teachers in the classroom, and the principal came to them and said, you know, I want you to present to our faculty meeting about this topic. So we even move away from the idea of papers with that. So we present this question to them. Then we take a few minutes and we find some resources in ERIC, and then we look at the different resources and we talk about that. We have the students identify different resources and we talk about the different ones and talk about, okay, with all these resources we found, how do we put them together to support our claim, to support our argument that we are going to use electronic books to help increase reading comprehension and the ability to make inferences. So we look through them and we find that there are things that connect. For example, in this one, it talks about the provision of narration and how narration leads to higher comprehension scores. And then I ask the students, well, is there any other thing that talks about something similar to this? Is there any other pieces that we can connect? And then we look at articles like the next one. And in this one, it is the same thing. This one's talking about read alouds, and it's not necessarily electronic books, but it is saying that read aloud increases comprehension. So I show my students, and we talk about this issue, that you can take stuff that may not talk about all the elements of your topic and connect it with other elements. Then we talk about how you're going to put this together and how are you going to communicate this. So what kinds of points, and we'll make an outline, a general outline of the presentation that they might do for the faculty that they've been asked to do. So what we're really trying to do is look at the skills. We're trying to guide them through the skills. I found this to be really effective, and in fact, I have found in the year that I've been doing this, this year, 2014, that I've been focusing on this, my number of reference questions that come one-on-one into my office has actually significantly reduced, which may seem like a bad thing, but in this situation, it's a really good thing because it means that they're learning more. And they don't feel like they have to come and ask me. And even when they do come and ask me, their questions are much more specific and pointed, and they really are, it's obvious that they're thinking about what we're trying to do. So while not the only answer, or maybe even the best answer, we really have come to an understanding that there is a way to teach skills, and that we can use that in our library instruction. As we move forward, we really want to figure out how can we better assess these skills. We know that there are deficits. I know that most of you have, in your classes, have seen those deficits. We really think that there are ways to assess them, but we don't know how to do that. The iSkills is probably the best thing out there right now. And so we're really thinking, okay, is there a way that we can build a better test than an iSkills test? Are there other tests that test skills that aren't just multiple choice, that are doing technological ability or factual knowledge, that we can do a better job of assessing this? So our next step is we're going to begin working with some graduate students and see if they can't help us to start figuring out what kinds of tests we could use, and possibly create our own test to better assess all of this. So that is the end of what we have to say. So we'd like to open it up for any questions that you may have. You can point them in the chat, or you can unmute your microphone and see if the sound is better on your end. And any questions? I guess while we're waiting, Suzanne, Jenny, anything you guys want to clarify or add as we're waiting?
I think one of the things that's been so beneficial is our collaboration of coming together and being able to talk. I have sent my students to the library to have a research presentation or to learn things, but I think it's been great for me to hold some sort of responsibility, that it's not just something that happens at the library, but there are things that I'm doing in my class where we're supporting one another, and so that it becomes not just something that occurs in a certain place.
Yeah. Let's see. We're focused on critical thinking skills. I don't know. Unfortunately, the students that come in for my library instruction are from classes other than Jenny's. So I don't know if she has directly seen any improvement on that. That is one thing we are actually going to start assessing to see what kinds of improvement. And I'm working with a faculty member in the Department of English where those classes come from, where I've done this changed presentation to see if we can't do some citation kinds of things. So that definitely is a next step. My library instruction sessions vary in length. Most of them are about 50 minutes, although a great majority of them are an hour and a half sessions. And I know that there's a lot of you out there that will say, how in the world can you accomplish what you described in 50 minutes? But it really is actually very easy to do. I mean, I think when you pull back from teaching, pointing, and clicking, you have a lot more time to cover everything you need. So, oh yeah, you want to speak to that, Jenny?
I will speak to that. As far as the question that's saying, that perhaps you have a muddled relationship with where you're at, I don't know. Well, I will say that Rachel has put forth a great effort to be visible in our college. And so people aren't surprised or wonder who she is. She attends faculty meetings and social events, and so I think Rachel, that is attributed to her, to building a relationship. But again, it really has come down through conversation and our commitment to this project of seeing where does it come together, where do we come together and find similarities with this. Do you have anything to say about?
No, I think that's great.
Mary, this is a fascinating question. Future teachers, what do they see? It's been very interesting. We have found a lot of reluctance on the part of our students in taking this test. Again, they're very concerned that about the platform of the test, that it almost looks like a DOS. And so they say, when they come at it, they'll say, well, if it was more current, if it had asked me to work in PowerPoint, I would have done better. Or if it would have been an Excel spreadsheet, I would have done better. And so I think they've been a little disturbed at their scores. They thought they would score much higher. And so when they're thinking about the test and they think about it as students, then they're really coming at it from, this is a really low-level thinking. These are things I learned. Some of our comments have been, I learned this when I was in 6th grade. Who would really need to know this? But then when I've switched them to what I refer to as a new literacies perspective, and that they need to do this in the classroom, then they're all about it, and it's very, very important. And these students are lucky that they are so bright.
Yeah, yeah. And I guess kind of as a teaser, that is one of the unexpected things that we found in this study is this contrast between their perceptions of their information literacy skills, just them, and their perception of their information literacy skills as a teacher and as a classroom teacher. And we hadn't intended to run the test this last fall semester, but because of that interesting finding, we actually ran the test again this semester with that in mind, and we have found some really interesting things about that contrast and about their thinking along those lines. It's going to be a teaser because we're not presenting on that data today or that information. You'll have to read our article that we're going to be publishing here soon, but we have found a really interesting, in summary, just a really interesting disconnect between those two sections of it. They don't think it's important for them, but they think it's really important for them as classroom teachers. So that has been one of our interesting things. Where will we be publishing? We actually are looking at several publications coming out here in the next year. Some of them will be in library journals. We're looking at the Behavioral Sciences Librarian for some of our library articles. And then, of course, with ACRL in one of their publications are the ones we're targeting. And then we'll also be targeting some of our teacher education journals. I think that's the other important thing about this, as Jenny said, this collaboration. We really want to get this information beyond the library community. This isn't just library information. This isn't library discipline information. This is teacher education information too. So we want to present it to that. So we've got publications that are going forward here and will be out in those journals very soon. And if you're interested, our email addresses are up there, and you can just email us if you're interested, and we'll let you know when those come out. So, threshold concepts. That's you, Suzanne.
Oh. Yeah, I'm not sure what ETS is planning with their tests because I haven't seen a lot of updating and haven't heard from the sales representative for a while. I don't know that they're going to be considering this, so I think it'll be up to us as a community to see what we can do to produce something that will help us with the threshold concepts. They're very different, and I think we'll be looking at some things that will help us in that area. And thanks, sorry about the sound again. The other thing that I was thinking about with iSkills that might be a limitation with this is, we were doing a baseline. We were trying to find out where our students were located. But as we thought about a pre and a post, because the iSkills doesn't change the questions, we wouldn't know if our progress was based on the fact that they had seen the questions before or if they had really made progress. And so we need a test that's a little more adaptable as well.
And that's one of the things we want to build into the test that we're looking at is to see if we can't do a pre and a post test that would have different skill testing ability. So you could eliminate that focus if the test was if the test was making them better, having taken it twice instead. So
one of the other things is thinking about baseline that we were looking at is we're interested, especially thinking about teachers, is working with a population of practicing teachers and being able to compare that data with our pre-service teachers to see if practicing teachers are using these skills or if that's something we don't need to attend to.
Yes, that is actually what we are planning on doing. We've identified some potential graduate students who are looking for dissertation projects, and that is our plan that we're gonna go forward. Jenny is saying that one of those graduate students is me, which is true, and so I'm going to be getting my PhD in the next couple of years, and so that is going to be part of my focus of my doctoral dissertation is developing that kind of test to see how well it can be done, because I think that's one of the really negative things about this is we really haven't, and even in the new literacies area, the teacher ed area, we can't find any other test that really assess these skills at that level. So ETS is the best we've got, and it's not very good. It's good, but it has such limitations. So yeah, it has strong limitations. So we really want to make sure that we do that. So yes, that is definitely on the agenda. And in fact, when we started this, we didn't think we were going to find anything very interesting. We kind of went into it, our initial idea was we want to just go into it and see how useful iSkills is, and is it something we could use. Our School of Education currently does a technology test that they give all of their students, and we were kind of thinking, well, maybe iSkills could be a replacement for that. But we immediately began to realize that there was so much more here than just testing the test, and that we found some really hugely unexpected things for us, really shocking kinds of things for us that we were uncertain we were going to find. And so that's just kind of led to all of these other kinds of questions that we haven't entirely answered yet. You know, what other kinds of tests are available? How can we compare our group to other groups? Like Jenny said, we've actually started a process. We're going to test some practicing teachers in the classroom and use the iSkills test to see them and see where their weaknesses lie. Developing a new test, also developing instruction that connects the School of Education and the library more directly. So, you know, there's a lot of work that we have yet to do. The data has shown us some great potential, not only for changing our practice, both in the School of Education and the library, but also for potential topics to explore further later on. Other questions? Okay, go ahead.
So, Suzanne, Jennifer, and Rachel, if people think of questions later, they can contact you through those email addresses, correct?
Yes, please. Our email address is there on the screen for you. Please feel free to contact any of us. We're more than happy to answer any other questions you may have.
Well, thank you so much. This was so interesting. And I also want to thank Jennifer Harvey for connecting with you to bring this presentation to us. Just a reminder to everybody that this has been recorded, or being recorded as I speak, and that we will send that out to the EBSS list as soon as it's available, so we can share it more widely. Any other last questions? Well, thanks again, and we appreciate your presentation. Thanks everyone for attending.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.